Hey there, it's Micah with Memberium. In this video, we're going to talk all about shortcodes. We're going to talk about some basic stuff and also some advanced stuff. Now, some people let the part of the word that says code scare them off, but shortcodes are really pretty simple, so you don't need to be scared. You can get advanced, but you don't have to get a lot done with them, and I'll show you that. A couple of the core concepts of shortcodes. First of all, when you use a shortcode, you just want to put it on the page without formatting, meaning you don't need to bold part of the shortcode or anything. It's better sometimes just to do it in text. And as a quick example of what I mean by that, here we have a shortcode. If you copy this, you're going to get the formatting along with it. Sometimes that's safe to do. Or if I copy this, I'll get the formatting. So if I were to copy it with the formatting, it's fine if I put it into the text editor. So here I am in WordPress. If I put it into the text editor, it just drops the formatting. But if I were to put it into the visual editor, it might have that formatting there. So you can see this is bold. And it doesn't matter all the time, but there are a few cases, and I'll jump to one here. In this case, copying out the shortcode with the formatting might make a little bit of a mess when you edit it. So you just want to kind of watch out for that. So if I put this here, it looks pretty normal on this end, but if I look at it in the text editor, there's these strong tags mixed in there. So there's a strong tag, which is bold for that part, and then it ends the strong tag, and then there's another one. So again, just be aware that if you are copying them off of our site, load them into the text view. So go into the text tab first, go ahead and load it in there. And then if you want to, you can switch back to visual and it will have just dropped all the formatting. Another core concept is some shortcodes are invisible, meaning they run in the background, and some are actually designed to create something on the page. So as an example with this shortcode here, what it's saying is if you have either of these tags, if the user logged in has either of these tags, go ahead and show them this message. Otherwise, show them this other message. The other shortcode that we were on a moment ago, the mem contact shortcode, this is designed to display, for example, the person's first name. So if I copy that and I come over here and I go again to the text mode and I paste it in, if the person logged in was named Joe, it would just say Joe where the shortcode is. So those are some examples of some visual shortcodes. I just jumped over to a shortcode called mem run action set. This is an example of a shortcode that kind of runs in the background. So if you put this on your page, when they hit the page, it's just going to run this action set. It won't display anything. There's no button. It's not going to say success. It's just going to run it in the background. So that's an example of an invisible shortcode. The other core concept is we have some simple shortcodes that just output a word, for example. And then there are conditional shortcodes, or in other words, some that have multiple parts. If I look at our test page, this is an example of a simple shortcode. There's only one piece to it. It's just going to provide something on the page, like in this case, a first name. And then this is an example of a conditional shortcode or a multi-part shortcode, where it's conditional because it's evaluating something. It's saying only if they have these tags, show this. And then here's the second part of the shortcode, which is the switch, meaning else, or if they don't have those tags, what do we do instead? And that is that you can show this message here, and then there's the close of the shortcode. So this is one shortcode, but it has multiple parts. It's got the opening thing, it's got the switch statement or the else, and then it's got the closing. The last core concept we'll cover is that shortcodes have attributes. You might occasionally hear them called parameters as well, but these are the things that you can set that will decide how a shortcode runs. Here in the case of our examples, the attribute here is fields. So mem contact is technically the shortcode itself. The fields attribute, when you define it, decides what to show. So it could just be a first name. If you wanted to, you could separate that and give a first and a last name. And if I were to go to that shortcode here in a browser and scroll down, there are actually several attributes. So I could call any field here. There's a bunch of examples. And like I said, you might see it called parameters here and there, but it's saying, okay, what's the main thing? It's defining the fields. You can also, though, define a separator. Meaning if I did want to pull first and last name, what do I want those two separated by? Maybe a space. And that's where you can see the default separator, if you don't do anything, is a single space. But if you wanted that to be, for example, a comma or a dash or something, you could do that as well by defining the attribute separator as whatever you want it to be. So if I go to my page and we look at that, what that would look like is basically just a space here. And we do separator. We'd say equals. And then depending on what it is, so if it was a letter, let's say we wanted to space everything with an X, that's going to put the first name, X, last name. If you wanted to do something like a dash, that would be fine just to do a dash. But what you'll notice in a lot of our documentation is we might put, after the equals, we might put some quotes. So there might be quotes here, and that way whatever we put in between the quotes is what's used for the value of that attribute. The reason this is really important is because otherwise, if we tried to just put a space, so if we said separator equals, and there's a space, it's not really going to read this space. But if we put quote, space, quote, now it's going to pick up whatever's between those quotes. And if you look at the documentation here, for example, you'll see that. So this here, this is one string, meaning there's no spaces, so it doesn't necessarily need quotes around it. But since this piece does have a space, it does need quotes. And this is really valuable, especially where there's a shortcode where the output might be a message. So, for example, I jumped to this shortcode mem send password, and it is just designed to put a little form on the page for them to retrieve their password and have it sent to them. But if you were to set the attribute email text, for example, which actually changes what the label is on this form, so instead of email address, you could have it say something else, you would definitely want to put quotes around it. So let's say that we wanted to set the email text and the button text on one of these. So I would grab the shortcode. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come over to my page and I'm going to put it here. And then I'm going to take out this attribute. I don't want to do that, but I do want to do email text equals, and we'll do quote, quote. And then I'll put a space and say button text equals quote, quote. And that way I can say something like your email address. And it knows what is between the quotes is the value for that attribute. And button text, I can say get your password. So that's just an example, but that's a case where definitely you need quotes, because without the quotes, what it's going to see is it's just going to see the word your, and then it's going to skip ahead and think that this is the name of the next attribute. So obviously in this case, that wouldn't work. We would want the quotes around it so that we know that this is the full attribute name, everything between the quotes, including spaces and commas and whatever else might be in there. That's mostly it for the core concepts.